See what that happened. Oh, well, you didn't tell me there was multiple buttons. Yeah, I just love technology. And you know, I used to own an IT company, but we didn't use wireless microphones. So I was thinking about the favor of God, and I got up. Now, I am culturally, my wife would say, deficient. So I'm reading this book called The 90s. It's a cultural anthropology. And it's about the 90s. Okay, like I'm 40 years old during the 90s. And like I have no idea any of this was going on. This is like, Marianne, did you know Nirvana? You know, and she said, well, yeah. I said, well, why don't I know Nirvana? She said, because you listen to the same three music groups. You know, John Baez and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Creedence Clearwater Revival. You know, just the really good ones. You know, I don't listen to the new stuff. And I was just reading this, but just this whole idea of just being blessed. And I was just thinking about it. So I'd get my iPad out and check my email really quick. And then this one particular morning, I was thinking about the favor of God, and I opened up YouTube, and the first song was the song we're about to sing. And all I could do was weep, because it said exactly what my heart was feeling. So come lead us in the song, and then I'll preach my 7-minute sermon.
upon you and 1,000 generations, your family, your children, their children, their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, your family, your children, their children, their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you, within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming and you're going, you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. 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 May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you, within you. He is with you, he is with you in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming and you're going and you're weeping, rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. I don't even know if that song meant to be a tearjerker or if I'm just old and just cried anything. If you can just hear those words, he is for you. He's for you. And man, I remember that morning just how, we were facing all kinds of obstacles and, what I do is clean up messes. So, it's my own fault because I like doing it. And so, but sometimes you get tired of the battle, and you get tired of people who go to church but don't act like Christians. And it's just, he's for you. He's for you. He's for you. So I'm driving back from Dallas, where I had been working. I got Marianne with me, and when we came through Joplin, we came through, and I picked up a rod in my tire on my Explorer, and the tire went instantly flat, and I'm like, I could see the sign that said exit 2 miles, and I just passed an exit 2 miles back, and all the trucks couldn't pull over because they were going to get on that interstate. They were going to take that exit and go down toward Fayetteville. So they're rocking the car. So we have resources, so we called AAA, which was in itself an experience. And then finally they said, oh yeah, we can get somebody right out there. So, okay, well, how long do you expect it to be? Oh, about 3.5 hours. I said, well, that's a different definition of right out there than I have, but so I thought, okay. I said, okay, well, I'll just change the jack myself. So I retire myself. So I get out, I go open up the trunk. Yes, I do know how to change the tire. And the jack was locked up. I couldn't get the jack unlocked. And I'm thinking, well, you know, like, okay, in 3 more hours, AAA will be here. So I didn't know what else to do, so I called a friend of mine down in Branson just to chat with him. Hey, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm sitting on the side of road 44 waiting for AAA. Well, why don't you just change the tire yourself? Well, my jack's all out of whack and it doesn't work. He said, well, I've got jacks. I'll just throw them in the back of the car and I'm on my way. He said, I'll be there in about 45 minutes. I said, man, that's really nice. And so I thought, you know, that's nice. You know, God, you know, going to send 2 jacks. And just a few minutes before he got there, this older pickup pulled in behind me. And this guy whose name was Curtis, he gets out. Having trouble? Yeah. I mean, I'm in southwest Missouri, so there's a cultural aptitude in southwest Missouri. He says, well, I'm a little worried you being here on the side of the road. It's not safe. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of aware of that. So let me just fix your tire for you. I said, well, my jack is like, well, I got a jack in the back of my truck. So he goes and he gets the jack out and, you know, he's starting to do it. And then by that time, my friend from the Branson area showed up. And there's time when it pays to be the old man. Okay, they go, it wouldn't be safe for you to be down on the ground. You know, so you stand back. In other words, get out of my way, old man. We're going to change the tire. And you know, you just never know with people's attitudes and stuff. And let me just tell you about Curtis. So he needed a board. And so I said, I'll get it. So I went to the back of his pickup and I looked up on the windshield of his pickup and he's got this huge decal that says, "Let's go Brandon." You know, and I go, well, okay, I kind of know where Curtis stands on the cultural battles, you know. And then I walked around to the front of his pickup truck and I looked at his license plate and it says, "Hillary for prison." You know, and I go, well, maybe there's a ministry here, you know. But Curtis fixed my tire and everything, and I visited with him a little bit, and he just continually said, well, you're going to be safe. You know, don't drive more than 75 miles an hour on the donut, but probably 60 would be better. And then he left, you know. And Mary and our friends left, and we got in the car. And I thought, what kind of God would pull out a friend to come and bring me that, and then a total stranger stop? And it just hit me again. I got the favor of God. I just got the favor of God. But I haven't always lived like I knew that. Somehow or another, I managed to convince myself that my past sins were still an issue to God. And they're not. They're not. And the only way those sins stay in my awareness spring is when I let them stay there. And I bring them up. But I need to be aware of something. The first thing I'm going to say, this is a Baptist church, so we got to get into sin. But I'm going to give you a break today. I'm not going to name your particular sin. All right? But the wages of sin is death. And when we allow sin to remain in our life, it's going to hamper us, destroy us, frustrate us, diminish us. Whatever the thesaurus that you've got, look it up. Because it's death that it's going to lead to. And so you got to take sin seriously. But more than just seriously, like I feel guilty about it. You actually have to do something about it. So that's what I want to talk to you about just a little bit. So what do you do about it? Well, this is really simple. If you're taking notes, there's only one point. You own it. You have to own it. The blood of Christ is all powerful. It broke the power of sin. The only way the sin's in my life is with my permission. That's the only way it's there. Now, I may have created a need for it, some sort of self-identity. I had a person yesterday tell me, well, I'm just by nature a very angry person. And I said, well, okay, let me just check the spiritual gifts and see where anger comes in there, And she said, well, I just get angry. And I said, yeah. She said, and I guess anger is a sin. I said, well, no. Well, it is, but it's not always a sin. So give yourself a break. But some anger is actually a lust for power. And that's a sin. When you reach out for sin. So that's the only really good sin I'm going to talk to you about. But here's what James says. When tempted, no one should say, God has tempted me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Their own evil desire. It's you. It's there because you're letting it be there. You may not even like it. All right? But it's still there because you're giving it permission. Because he also says, 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except which is common to man, and God is faithful that he will not allow you be tempted by what you can bear. Still you. So you own it. Sometimes you own stuff and you just kind of take it for granted. Like people own cars and they just take them for granted. We have a friend and she had like 80,000 miles on her oil change, which just like drove me nuts. I'm aware that this week I've got to get my oil changed or I'm going to be over 3 miles. And I just can't tolerate that. And I did wash my car before I came over here because I didn't want y'all to see me in a dirty car. And I drove around all the water on the highway too so I wouldn't get the road film. But, that's a different issue. But he provides that way out. But you got to be willing to take it. And you don't crawl out because what that really implies is that you stand up under it, which is a military word which means like march. We could have Steve march for us. And I'm sure lieutenant colonels in the Army still remember how to march, So I was in the Navy. We never bothered with marching, So we had trucks that hauled us places we didn't have to walk, So, but you see, with that, and that ownership, but not all the sin is our fault, Sometimes other people sin and it impacts us. The sins of parents impact children. But listen to this. You got to understand this. Let me see if I can say this the way I can conjure it up in my mind. It's just because the sin isn't your fault doesn't mean it's not your problem. You still have to deal with it. It's just not going to go away. And there's all kinds of theories and things about how to deal with it, and I'm going to skip that. But I'm just telling you that even though it's somebody else's sin and it's not your fault, it is still your problem. And you still have to have the grace and the mercy of God. And that's really all you need. Because from recognizing it, it comes forgiveness. And here's a beautiful thing. I'm from the 60s, and when truth became pretty transparent and it wasn't absolute anymore, but forgiveness is absolute. Yeah, it's just like he forgets that. The blood covers it. It's done until I bring it back up. And that forgiveness kind of keeps going on and on and on with us. And then we see that if you can accept his grace, But Satan doesn't want you to accept the grace. He'd rather bring you back. Now, I haven't figured out what this means yet, because the scriptures clearly says, don't put your hand on the plow and look back. All right? So I don't know if that's like forbidden me to ever reminisce, or if there's something deeper than that. You probably, your insight is as good as mine. But what I know is my past is my past. So I had this episode where we were doing one of our business retreats, and the company that I own, or one of the companies that I own, whatever, we do these retreats for small businesses. And we don't advertise it as being a Christian retreat. We save that till the very end. So basically what we do is we transition by saying, hey, now that you've gone through our retreat and aren't we wonderful, you're probably going to make more money than you made before, and you ought to be happy about that, except that we have some bad news for you, and that you're not actually going to be happier, because money can't make you happier. And then one of us gives our testimony. So this retreat was in St. Charles, Missouri, and so my two partners said, hey, with this crowd, Wayne, you need to tell your story. Well, I don't really like to tell my story, like I'm an old guy. These are all like young business guys, 35 to 45. What does the old guy have to say to them? So they said, yeah, remember we said what's good is determined by the group, and we're the group, and so you're going to tell your story. I said, okay. So I kind of conjured it up in my mind. What was I willing to lay out? And I came to Christ late, not real late, not like I was 22, but I was 21 when I came to Christ. And I lived life to the fullest on the dark side before that. And so I talked about that. I talked about the way I lived. I talked about what I did and got through it, and it was well received. 2 business people came to Christ that day, and I should have been celebrating. So Mary and I go to church on Saturday night. We go with Jesus and Paul, and we go on Saturday night, and then we go to Bandanas for dinner afterwards. Y'all welcome, come join us anytime. Just let us know you're there, so we get plenty of room at our table at Bandanas for you. Did it last night, had a table full of people, and but I'm driving back from St. Charles, and this rush of shame just came down on me. You scumbag. You did that. I can't believe you did that. And it just, oh man, it was just draining the life out of me. And I got home, and that's kind of the way I'm feeling and everything. And so Marianne comes hopping in, a little Miss Energy, and go, hi, it's almost time for church. I'm going, oh, great. Like they're probably preaching on sin. So we get in the car, and I turn on the Christian radio station. Every song from the drive time of my driveway to our church out in Fenton was about grace. And I go, wow, Lord, man, I'm just having trouble receiving that, but I get what you're saying to me. So we go in and we sit down. And guess what? All 4 songs we sang were about grace. And I'm going, okay, so maybe there's a message for me here, but here comes the sermon, and I'm sure he's going to bring up sin. Well, normally we have a screen drops down because we have a teaching pastor at our central location, and we watch him on screen. And so our campus pastor gets up and says, hey, we're going to do something different. I'm thinking, okay, does that mean we're not talking about sin? Or what? He goes, I want to just deliver a message to you. And what did he talk about? Grace. I told you God liked me. I told you that he liked me. When I think about this song, it's, the song, if a little twangy, maybe a little more twangy, a steel guitar might have helped it out a little bit. I'm sure John Fogerty could rewrite it, But he is for you. He is for you. He is for you. Man, can you receive that message? Can you really let it just alter the way you live? That he's for you. It doesn't really matter where you are in this spiritual journey. He's for you. So here's a little piece of my life. All right? So I'm not going to confess any sin, so don't get excited. When I came back from Vietnam, I was in a bad place. That makes sense? Is that enough? And so I'm a little bit of an adventurer. So I decided that the wise thing for me to do is go to the woods in Central Oregon. I have no idea why. I mean, you could say, Wayne, why did you do that? And I go, I don't really know. I knew a town to go to because a guy I had served with was from that town. So I went to his town and I hung out for a while. Wasn't really well received by the sheriff. It was a small town. Sheriff was kind of an Andy Griffith kind of sheriff, And so he invited me to leave, And so I thought, okay, what am I going to do next? I am going to go to Tulare, California, where my uncle lived and his family, and my uncle was a career man in the Navy, and he was still in Vietnam, and so it was just my Aunt Barbara and her 3 sweet daughters. And so I thought, okay, I'll just go. Well, I'll just hitchhike. So I'm hitchhiking along. I'm really not doing anything wrong from the world standpoint. And then suddenly it hits me. I don't have any ID on me. I have nothing that proves who I was. And it's illegal to hitchhike in the state of California. Which means if I get picked up, I'm going to spend the night in the jail because they're going to run my fingerprints. And I wasn't worried about what they would find because I was in military intelligence. And so they would find my fingerprint and see that I wasn't a bad guy and do whatever they were going to do to me. But I didn't like the idea of the possibility of spending the night in jail. So I'm walking along this plain, this open plain, and I looked out to the east and I saw Three Sisters Mountain. And it was beautiful. I mean, I stopped on the side of the road and just looked at it. It's the 60s, so it's kind of a hippie thing to do. And then I went back to reality because when I looked up, I could see here was the sign that says, "Welcome to California." I go, okay. And as I'm walking toward that sign, I don't remember what I prayed, but I asked God to help me. Didn't give him any instructions. I didn't say, hey, I need you to pick me up in a really nice SUV and, with some Creedence music on and then allow me to sit and no, I didn't do any of that. Just help me. Just about to get to the sign and this trucking company pickup pulls over. That's my ride. I'm thinking, good, I got a ride. So I'm not going to jail in Northern California. I'm probably going to jail in Southern California. So I put my backpack in the back of the truck and I climbed in and met the guy, a young guy my age. I was young then. I was 20 years old. And we talked. He had been in the Army. He was at Fort Polk in Louisiana. His daddy owned this trucking company. He was running parts. And he knew that it was illegal to hitchhike in California. And so he said, I'm going all the way to Sacramento. He said, I can take you as far as Sacramento. And then he said, I will take you to our bunkhouse where our truck drivers stay, and then in the morning you can get up and get on a truck that will take you to Tulare, where your aunt lives. And I go, oh yeah, that sounds like pretty good. Yeah. So I had to kind of settle in. He had a bunch of papers and stuff all over the cab of his truck. And so he said, hey, just move those papers out of the way and get comfortable. I moved all the papers away, and underneath the papers was a Bible. And it scared me to death. God answered my prayer. I'm in the truck with a Christian. What if he starts the church thing? And I can't hop out because I wouldn't be able to grab my backpack, and then I'd probably hurt myself, and then I'm in the hospital, then I'm going to jail, and I'm just processing all this. And when I continuously declined the opportunity to stay in his bunkhouse, he said, okay, what I'll do is I'll take you to the bus station in Sacramento, and I'll buy you a bus ticket to Tulare. I go, well, no, I can buy my own ticket. You can just let me out. No. And he came in and he stayed with me. And not in a way to make sure I didn't cash the ticket in, but just like we were like two guys. And to be real honest, I thought we were pretty cool. But I had the backpack on, had the red plaid shirt, kind of straggly hair. Everybody must have known that I was cool. But I think about that. I hadn't give God 3 seconds of thought since I was like 15 years old. And yet, at age 20, in a less than 30-second prayer, I think he answered it. Why would he do that? Because he cares about me. And it was the beginning of a process that eventually led to me coming to Christ in October. This would have been about April. And in October of that year at the USAO campus in Chickasha, Oklahoma, Joel Knowles, the Baptist Student Union Director, led me to Christ. But the journey started back there with that guy picking me up. And God heard that prayer. Do you understand he hears yours? That he actually cares about you? Did you ever just connect the dots that when it says that for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son? You know John 3:16. Have you figured out that that's you? That he cares about you. And that with an open heart, you can stand and you can share where you really are in life. And he listens. And the good news is he has the power to do something about it. So let me kind of wrap it up with this. So why don't we do that? Well, first of all, I think guilt. My sin's just too bad. My sins are just too bad. That's not true. The blood covers them all, not some. And that includes all of yours. Even your stupid sin, Even the sin that you committed when he provided you a way out and you just asked for a time delay on the way out so you could kind of enjoy the sin a little longer, And don't tell me you've never done that, because, we're all human in here. So you have the guilt, but you also have the shame. But that's where God's grace covers it. Grace just covers it. Here's another quick story. I'm in Chicago, helping this church do street outreach. And these guys are all really cool. I'm old. They're cool. They're doing street stuff. They're doing marvelous stuff. The only part I didn't like, it was by Wrigley Field, and I'm really not a Cubs person, So after the evening, so these guys, we're all gathering around. We're kind of doing this afterglow thing. So I'm sitting in there, like I'm the consultant. I must be smart. You're paying me to be smart, and I'm from out of town. And so these guys are talking back and forth. And this one guy looks at me, and he goes, you know what? Because they had reached some prostitutes and some people in the drug culture that night. And this guy looks at me, and he says, this must have been a highly unusual night for a good deacon boy like you. And then I thought, well, you self-righteous? Let me just tell you how big my sin, and I didn't. Because suddenly it hit me. God's restoration is so perfect that he washes away even the scars of the sin, and no one has to know unless you're willing to tell them. That's how beautiful his restoration is. And that's how beautiful that I've received that restoration. Now, I've got 1 or 2 sin, maybe 5 since then, So it's not like I haven't sinned, but not like I was. Not the fun sin. I just do the boring sin like pride and lust and stuff like that, But not the really cool stuff that would, that you want to write a book about, But the restoration is there. Because he wants a relationship with us. That's all he ever wanted from me, was a relationship. He likes me. He likes you. Doesn't like everything about you, maybe me, but maybe not you, But he likes us. And he wants that grace to move down. It's about you. He wants that. Whatever condition you come to him, he wants that. You just have to take your sin seriously. You really have to take it seriously. So I came up with this. I was in Arkansas yesterday. Went to beautiful Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. There, duck hunting. You know the Beatles had been there? And I didn't. But I do now. And then we went to Piggott, Arkansas, to see the Hemingway house. A beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And we also saw some friends. And so I'm thinking about this message. So here's kind of what I'm envisioning. Okay, so because I know like the Baptist church. So I begin the invitation, and you stand up, and we sing. I didn't know what we were going to sing, but I know we would sing. And so you're like me, you're wondering, well, I hope we don't go to 5 verses, or when's he going to cut that off? Would somebody just walk down the aisle so he'll be content, let us all go. I got a pot roast to get, whatever, And I thought, you walk out and 3 minutes, and even for some of you, before you even get out those doors, you had already forgot everything I said. I could stand out there and say, what was that sermon about? And you go, well, it was a good one, preacher. Because you've already forgot. You're already thinking about, man, I've got to watch that Genesis tournament today. Will he maintain that fabulous lead? I knew I could get golf into this somehow. So I want to take that away from you. And I want to end abruptly, so that you can't close this off. That you have to at least think about it. And you can't be finished. Now, this is not to impress you with how smart I am, but this is actually a neurological approach. Because once you bring a point of closure, people will forget stuff. So I'm not going to allow you to have any closure. But I want you to know that God loves you. And he wants a relationship with you. And the only one in control of what's keeping that relationship from happening is you. And I'm just begging you to deal with it. We are now dismissed.